Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So I would cover the Harry and Meghan debacle, but seeing as latest polling suggests that 40% of people really don't give a crap either way, and yet it is still clogging up our news feeds, how about we go to something which has kind of slipped under the radar? Which is the vandals who criminally damage statues face up to 10 years in jail plus £2,500 fine under new law, which is proposed and hasn't actually passed yet. It doesn't just include this, there are a few different things it includes. Most notably and disturbingly, of course, is to say if there's a non-violent protest, that the police will have more powers in order to detain and arrest and charge people for freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, anything like that, which does definitely seem to be taking it a bit far. But that is always the case. Not only is the 10-year jail jail and fine a little bit excessive, but of course it will only be applied selectively, like 5-year prison sentence for carrying a knife, which translates to 50 quid fine if you're black. I mean, let's be real. That we know that the law isn't applied equally, so it's basically just to go after political dissidents, as I've said time and time again, and will continue to say so until I'm proven wrong, which cannot come soon enough. But on top of that, to say, if it's a political dissident or just somebody or a protest which the government doesn't really like, then of course by increasing police powers, that's always the way towards a more authoritarian state. They're saying, yeah, we can strip away your freedoms if we're feeling a bit scared, or if we tell you we're feeling a bit scared due to COVID, for example, to say, yeah, China fucked up, either intentionally or unintentionally, and because we didn't take control of the situation fast enough and just believe the bullshit that they've been spouting for years, now you've got to suffer for it, and we're going to take advantage of that in order to try and create a need for us which wasn't there in the first place, but you'll definitely be so grateful that we saved you from this thing that wasn't really an issue and could have been resolved earlier. So, yeah, it very much is like the scene from Yes Minister, which is, of course, to say, at first, that no, there isn't a problem, and then, well, there might be a problem, and then, okay, yes, it was a problem, but it's too late to do anything about it now. That seems to be the three ways that government deals with it, and so they've gone with the last one. Well, they've gone with all three, really, haven't they? So, the new police, crime, sentencing, and courts bill is set to be unveiled on Tuesday. Bill will propose vandals could face 10 years in prison and a fine of up to £2,500. Current law means courts can impose 3 months for damage worth less than £5,000, and the bill will also introduce tougher powers for police to tackle non-violent protests. Bear in mind with the less than £5,000 mark, obviously price is subjective, but especially so when it comes to government-run pricings. As in, if something is being done for the state, then price theory just goes out the window. Because if you're good at business and can negotiate, you're not going to settle for a low-paying government job compared to what you could get in the free market. So, trying to understand what exactly is worth £5,000 is an impossible task. But of course, because you're going up against the state, because that's the law as well, you're fucked. They will spin it either way, depending on how they want to charge you. So the government is set to introduce new laws. Yep, cool. The move comes after a host of memorials and statues across the country have been damaged in the past year as a result of increasing tensions over Britain's colonial history, which I think just shows the education has done a great disservice. And I know the Academic Agency has gone into great detail about India, for example, to say, well, no, they actually did substantially better during the British Empire. And bear in mind, the British Empire was a net loss, and the reason that it ended was because of the NHS. And that is not a trade that I would take any day. I'm more than happy to revert on that one. But that is the fact of the matter. And if you really want to say support black businesses, well, isn't that what Britain was doing during the slave trade? Because the black people weren't stolen from Africa. Oh no, they were bought out of the slave trade that was already thriving in Africa when black people were buying and selling other black people. So we were supporting black businesses by buying from black-owned businesses who were selling slaves. But something tells me that's not going to go down so well. But there are so many fun little loopholes like this when you get to intersectionality and something which doesn't have a sound principle or foundation. You can pick it apart at whatever angle you want, and it can be quite comical. Especially, it reminds me of the interview with Gavin McInnes and the feminist who was all shot on a monochromatic tape. And she has no idea who he is. And he's pretending to be nice, but also just running rings around her, just asking her awkward, annoying questions. If I can find it still on YouTube, I'll put it down below. It's about an hour long, but it's definitely worth a watch. Just as she kind of questions herself and her positions and kind of realizes this is all a load of rubbish. And he's just going along, gently encouraging her, saying, yes, yes it is. It's well worth a watch. Go check it out. But first, so according to the Telegraph, the new law, which will be passed under the wide-ranging police, crime, sentencing and courts bill, will not just cover statues but also gardens and flowers or wreaths laid at gravestones, which will also cover structures like the cenotaph and any other similar monuments installed to commemorate a person or animal alive or dead, which is worthwhile to increase it from 3 months by all means, but 10 years is excessive, but it's there just to make headlines essentially, so that they can have all the focus on that and then, sweep something else under the rug, like more powers when it comes to non-violent protests or peaceful protests, as in legitimately peaceful protests. For example, it's the big action to hide the small action kind of thing. For example, with the US and Cuomo, that they're all focusing on the sexual assault allegations to hide just the amount of deaths he's responsible for by using nursing homes as a quarantine from COVID. It's that kind of thing, that you focus on that in order to get attention away from the real issue. So to me, that seems to be what it's there for. Of course, it is nice to try and be proud of the history, but bear in mind, it's far better to do it through education and persuasion than it is to do it through force and violence. And the government is supposed to have the monopoly on force and violence, and that is the way that they seem to be doing it. Not explaining, contextualizing, as they go on to say, why these statues are here and what makes Britain great and Great Britain, but instead just to say, yep, this is it and you can't disagree with us or we will throw you away. That is never the right way to go about it. You're never going to have a unified, cohesive society if you don't explain things and talk things out, and instead just not only denigrate people who disagree, but actually restrict their freedoms even more. That is never the right way to do it. So instead of that, how about you focus on the education? Whereas what's happening at the moment beggars belief that we're supposed to be decolonizing our history while also coming out with these strong-arm laws. So I don't think you quite know what each other are saying. It seems to be that you're just creating more clashes to come out in the future. Unless, of course, the idea of the law is not to protect the monuments, as it so says, but just to be used against other people. For example, in June last year, when the 28-year-old was convicted after urinating on a memorial honouring murdered PC Keith Palmer in Westminster during so-called far-right protests, that what happened there was, of course, that the guy busted for a piss. He'd had a few, and so he did. He thought it was out of the way, it was off the side of the road, and yet it just so happened to be a memorial for PC Keith Palmer. And bear in mind what Keith Palmer did and why there was a memorial for him, and yet this guy's far right. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna piss on the memorial of the guy who lost his life trying to stop an Islamic terror attack in London. Yeah, that makes sense. No, clearly not. But again, it's just to be used on political dissidents. And in August, a 31-year-old woman admitted criminal damage after dabbing All Lives Matter in blue paint on the Royal Air Force Bomber Command Memorial in Green Park, which needn't be done. Again. JFK quote here, which is that if you make a peaceful revolution impossible, you make a violent revolution inevitable. Insurrection. And that is what you see here. If you stop people from saying things with words, then they'll show them with actions. So again, open things up, this will all go away. How will it go away? Because people will actually be able to express themselves instead of being met with violence. But hey, let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think, actually, no, this is a good thing, and we've given up too much ground to the left, and therefore it's about time we make our mark and stamp down on them, and just hope that it isn't used against us in the future? Or if you think, hey, no, this is all getting a bit out of hand, we're not looking to make enemies and get the gotcha moments on other people, we are actually looking for unity, as Joe Biden pretends he is, and a far better way of doing that is through peaceful explanations and conversations, and working on the education system. Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. But of course, until next time, have a good one.